Hey there, it's Lori here. I am stopping in today to show you how I made this Valentine's Galaxy card using one of the new stamps from Really Like You from Simon Says. It's just a sentiment out of this set that's you can find in the new Favorite Person kit. I'm also going to be using the stacked hearts die. I've cut about 3 or 4 of those dies and stacked them all up already, so that's already done. So I'm going to use this BRISTOL cardstock right now and do some ink blending. I've got candied apple, distress oxide, as well as a ripe raspberry. I wanted to show you quickly too my ink blender storage. A friend told me a while back that she just uses one for each color, so I've got Roy G. Biv going on here in this little nail polish holder, and then I have one for gold. And this is how I store my ink blending pads. I've got several different colors for different types of inks if I even reach for those, and then some new ones when I want to throw the old ones away. So I'm going to speed this up, but basically I'm just putting down the ink, blending the pink on 2 different corners, and then I'm going to blend the red in between. I usually go back over the color with the previous ink blender just to where I can get all these blended in really nice and smooth. I love the way these oxides blend, especially on the BRISTOL cardstock. It just goes really smoothly. Next I'm going to take some water. I just take the cap off of this and sprinkle water. The reaction makes a fun little effect, and I'm also going to add in some ink. This is Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White ink, and I put a little bit on an acrylic block along with some water just to thin it out a little bit, and then I'm just going to sprinkle that on to the cardstock. This used to drive me crazy because I have to have a little bit of control over where everything goes, but I'm learning to let go and just let the drops fall where they fall. So I wanted to speed this up by heat embossing just to dry the cardstock. So I'm using this new heat gun from WAGNER. You can get these on Amazon. They're about 20 bucks, and it's so nice because they have a stand and they stand up and you don't have to touch them. And the best part about this is drying this cardstock. I'll show you here in a minute, but there is hardly any warpage. I think it's a slow, steady heat, and so it keeps the paper pretty straight. And you can see all of that heat, and it didn't hardly warp. So it just makes for a nice flat card front. So next, I'm going to go through this a couple different times because I made it partway through this card and then didn't end up loving it. So you'll see me kind of tear it apart and start over. I'm going to use my Elmer spray adhesive to spray this heart die down to the card front. And then at this point I really start to change my mind on the layout of this card. So I have the sentiment, and I pulled that out and tried to place it with the die to see where it would lay, and I just didn't like how it was centered. I'm going to use the Love You off of this set, and I wanted it to just be centered just right. So I decided to take my little X-Acto knife, I don't know what this thing is called, the little finger cutter, and I'm going to do some surgery here. I just went through those layers really carefully with this sharp blade, and I was able to pop 3 of those hearts right off the existing die cut. I got lucky, and it worked really well, and it didn't pull up any of the red below, and it ended up looking really, really nice. The one thing though that still didn't work out for me was the layout of the card. That stamp would have been too low, and it just wouldn't have been centered correctly. So I got brave once again, and I pulled up the entire die cut. Fortunately, it wasn't dry totally, so it came right off the front of the card, and I was able to just scoot it up and over just a little bit. That spray adhesive usually works really well, and it doesn't come off, but in this case I was fortunate. It just maybe wasn't dry just yet. So now I've scooted it to the left and up, and that just gives a little bit more room for the Love You in the bottom corner. So I'm going to stamp this sentiment with VersaFine Black ONYX ink in the bottom of the card front. And I actually always do practice stamps. If it's a stamp that I've never used before, every time I will stamp on a scrap piece of paper just to make sure there's no fuzzies or any plastic from the stamp, because that's happened to me time and time again and I don't want to ruin this background. So just by stamping off, I was able to clean off some little pieces and save my card front. So now I'm going to take this little red heart that's also included in the stamp set, and I'm going to use red hot ink from My Favorite Things. And I'm just going to stamp this red heart around the bottom of the sentiment. This red hot ink is probably one of my favorite red colors. It's so bright and it just shows through this candied apple blend enough to just make a little bit of a fun detail. So now I'm going to take my score pal and score a card base, and I have my Teflon bone folder, which is my most favorite bone folder of all, and just flatten out that scored line. I always use ATG to adhere my card fronts to my card bases. It gives you a second to where you can kind of move your card front around, and then it's pretty much permanent, but I like that because then your card front's not going to fall off. So that's pretty much it for this card. I love this Valentine's Galaxy sort of background that I created. It was fun. Just going to sweep off a little bit of fibers and that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm so glad that you stopped in today. Hope you have a great day.